The general public has long claimed there's an existing bias in the news media, but with the recent presidential election, this has become a dominant issue. Now, conservative and liberal students alike are really talking about this.
I think there's a strong bias. I think there's probably not even a question that there's a bias.
And even if you look at the newspapers, like New York Times, makes me sick. Makes me sick.
Even members of the media say there's a bias in favor of Barack Obama. Dave McNeely teaches politics in the press at UT and writes a weekly column on Texas politics. He says the enthusiasm around Obama's campaign is the reason for a perceived bias.
There is a tendency to, as people excite, as a candidate excites people and begins to build up some momentum, that the press, whether consciously or unconsciously, I think begins to add to that momentum. There becomes sort of almost a bandwagon effect.
It was just a little over 2 weeks ago when people were lined up here outside UT's Flaunt Academic Center to cast their ballot for the next president of the United States. Now, many students here feel that there has been an obvious bias in the election coverage, which has affected the outcome.
In a survey found at journalism.org, Obama received 36% of the positive coverage, and 29% of his coverage was negative. McCain, on the other hand, only received 14% positive coverage, and 57% of his coverage was negative. Leah Finnegan is the editor of the Daily Texan.
I think the Daily Texan was pretty balanced. You know, national coverage is never our first priority, but we definitely try to represent both sides.
Matt Horine, co-chair of Students for McCain, says he's noticed unbalanced coverage.
Generally, there's a bias almost from the bottom up in the media, whether it's the student newspaper here at UT or the national media.
With the national media receiving much criticism for biased election coverage, viewers of local news are becoming more skeptical. Suzanne Black is the news director for KI in Austin. She says they work hard at keeping their election coverage fair.
In this particular presidential election, if we in the 5 o'clock newscast led with an Obama story followed by a McCain story, and 6 o'clock we might flip it and go McCain first, then Obama.
So whether you feel that bias in the media coverage of the election is just a perception or an actuality, everyone is encouraged to gather the facts for themselves and seek out multiple news sources to stay informed. Jared Staples, Texas Newswatch.